Hello everybody, welcome back to Gelvin Valley, a map for Farming Simulator 15. Well, as you can see, we're busy rolling our fields. Now we're over here kind of on a upper side, well, lower part of the map. There's this drop off over here, trying to get our fields prepped for planting. You know, this is like we're up on some massive bluff and we're overlooking a cliff. Probably would never have a situation like this in real life where we would be farming up to the edge like this. Yeah, don't even like looking at it from that angle. Um, so I'm trying to figure out if there's something I can do here. Doing map edge work is pretty tough stuff to do, and this is probably one of the few areas where it bugs me visually a little bit. So maybe I just need to plant grass kind of along this edge. I don't know. Suffice it to say, we're rolling our old canola field down, trying to get through it. Oh, and you know what? I'm reminded. Let me just pause a moment here. Need to turn on my. I'm not using this on every episode, but I often need to know where the end of 30 minutes is. I'm going to set up this timer that Atomic 67 gave me. It'll probably make me jump when it goes off. Maybe it'll make you jump too. That's how I'll know that the episode is done. You can hear the tick, 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 tick. I promise it isn't a bomb. It's just the timer where I can tell if the episode is over. Yeah, see, it's, wish the view was just a little different down there, but it is what it is. We'll just continue with this up and over the hill. I've been talking about pet peeves, and I know it's something that we all have. There's always something that bothers any one of us. Oh, you gonna have trouble getting up this hill, buddy? It does not like rolling this edge here, does it? Yeah, we'll just... Oh, I can hear the wind. Once you get to the top of this. You're kidding. Oh, look at that. I left a little bit of crop in the field. Oh, for goodness sake. I hate it when I do that. There's my profit sitting there in the field. I could have more than 80,000 in the bank now if I had only harvested that last little bit. The guy must have been in a hurry and stepped out of the field too soon. Who knows what happened? Who knows? That speaking of pet peeves, there's probably one right there, or maybe it's more aptly described as OCD or whatever, where yeah, something bothers you, and leaving an area of the field unharvested is something that would be one of my milder pet peeves, maybe. It is just a game after all, right? So, last time, pet peeves I talked about involved things on the road. I know we've talked about things on the road before, but specifically bikers and biking, both from the perspective of being on a bike and also from the perspective of a driver encountering bikes, or in my case, many, many bikes, and watching them hog the road and pretend as if roads were designed for bikes instead of cars. Wow, I am wondering if I need to reestablish some weight on this roller. That is abominable. Now can I, maybe I need to be cheating more uphill. You know what, I'm going to try to get back. Maybe I need to go take this uphill a little bit. Maybe this is the only area here. Try to... it's still trying to go downhill. There, I think we got it though. It seems like going around the edges with this roller, it's tougher because the edges of the field are less developed. And probably what it means is when I came through here with a chisel plow, I got too close to the edge, where it wasn't quite as smoothed out for the field surface, and ended up planting something on a surface that I shouldn't have planted something on. So, I don't know. It happens. But that isn't one of my pet peeves. Everything probably sounds like a pet peeve. Time of amount of your time of wasted speaking on the subject. But it's hard not to. There are just so many things I know for any one of us that get under our skin. So put on my glasses again here and see. I actually wrote a lot of these down. Probably sounds like I'm ranting. Oh, okay. So the next one on my list was I just wrote down power trip emails. And maybe all of us at some point or other have done this or something like this. I guess what I'm thinking of is I just seen it happen here the other day. Where you have someone who asks you to do something and they copy everybody and their dog on the email, particularly those who are at the top of the food chain. They want to make sure they put you on notice in front of a boss or whatever that, hey, I told you on such and such date, and you just know there's a type of person out there that will pull up old emails and say, I told you so, and, when something hits the fan or whatever. And I don't know what you'd call that kind of a person. I saw it happen recently. It was, oh, what was it? Maybe I shouldn't even say say for confidentiality reasons, but it was someone who, let me see here, that used to work for us, shall we say, who is now working with some of our customers or whatever, and chose to do this kind of a maneuver to some of our staff people that were working on a particular account, if you will. And you know what? I think I've mentioned before, we're not perfect. Nobody is. And so there are times, when we screw up, and maybe that's what happened here. I wasn't involved in this particular incident. I just heard about it later, from a staff person. It's like, really? You need to say all this stuff, put me on notice in front of all these people. It kind of is an embarrassment, shaming sometimes, if you will. All done in a so-called professional way. And I think you know what I mean. It isn't that people call you out. I mean, if you do it with finesse or whatever, so that you don't look like a jerk, when you're calling someone else out. And really, I mean, maybe snark is a way to do it, kind of snarky, when people behave that way. And nobody likes to just be called out for a mistake. And nobody in particular likes to be called out in in public. So I don't know. My personal philosophy is, because none of us are infallible, and when mistakes get made, which they do, I prefer to handle those face to face and direct with the person, that's involved. And a lot of times it's a simple mistake, and to just make them feel bad or to pile on top of how they already may feel for, maybe blowing it on something. You mean you want to make them feel so bad that you make them look bad in front of other people? To me, that's just demoralizing behavior. And it seems petty, it seems unprofessional, and I don't know why you would do it unless you're just a mean person and rude. To want to do that to another person. And maybe people do it because it's been done to them before, so they figure, well, that's how they have to right things in the world. If it's been done to me, I'm going to do it to someone else, so they know how it feels, you know. And of course, if someone does it to you, your natural human tendency is to want to do it back to them, and even more so. That just kind of seems to be how the human psyche works. But that's the kind of things that I'm talking about, those power trip emails where someone is called on the carpet, for something or put on notice in front of lots of people who otherwise ordinarily wouldn't need to know about it, but it's kind of almost done, I think, with malicious intent to make someone else look bad and somehow make you look good. And frankly, I don't know how it makes a person look good. There's been any number of times where I've seen the ad and it's like, oh, the person doing it, you must really be a jerk. And I don't know, for me, it garners sympathy for whoever's kind of on the receiving end of that. It's occasionally been me, and I don't like how that feels, and I for sure don't want to do it to someone else. So that's definitely a pet peeve, to see someone else pulling a stunt like that. And I suppose it could happen even in forums, that aren't just written communication or email. Email was the one I was thinking of, but I guess it could even happen verbally, like in a meeting, where someone calls out someone else, all prim, proper, and polite, and so-called professional, but underneath, they're just shooting daggers at the other person while trying to sound, above board and everything, and they're hurting someone in front of someone else. That that gets under my skin, I gotta say. So no power trip emails. Seems like there was something else I thought of too with this. Yeah, kind of slipped my mind. What can I say? Getting old. There's probably books written on pet peeve type stuff that happens in the business world. Oop! Need to drop the roller. Of games that people play, the drama that goes on, because in the business world we're all in one another's space, and anywhere you find people, you find issues, which we've mentioned a number of times. So what's the next one on my list? Getting compared to someone else. Oh boy. This is probably one parents here, especially when you got a family, more than one kid, and we've all seen and heard of it happen. It wouldn't have to be in a family, but let's say you got a family and one kid is a high achiever, they get good grades, and the next kid that comes along, hey, academics isn't really their forte, they struggled through school, or their mode of learning is just simply different from what the academic setup is designed for, so they're not able to learn effectively and the grades show it. But because the other kid is more able to work in that particular circumstance, they just look better. And sometimes the parents even, they aren't even comparing their kid one to another, but sometimes the kids themselves can feel pressure and it can feel like they're being compared. I know in my own family with my own kids, that occasionally came up as an issue, where one child might feel less academically gifted, but they feel bad, maybe if their grades aren't as good, and they say, well, I'm never going to be like so and so. I remember hearing some comments like that. And I remember feeling bad as a dad. When you hear that, it's like, child, I'm not comparing you. I've never said anything about this other kid in your presence, or nor have I ever in my mind tried to compare you. Well, maybe that would be a lie. Let me back that off. I think probably any natural person as a parent even if you try not to, you can't help but notice the differences between your children, and especially if it's with something healthy versus unhealthy. For example, if one kid works hard at their grades and the other kid doesn't, and maybe they're similarly gifted and one is lazy and one isn't, well, of course you're going to see that and you're going to notice those differences. But in terms of comparing worth as a person or noticing their gifts or understanding they're different, all I ever wanted from my kids was just that they tried and did their best. And I think probably most parents probably feel that way at whatever it is. The classroom isn't everything, and people learn in different ways. And some people are more gifted with their hands, some people are more gifted with what's between their ears. We're all different. So, what I think really, really hurts is to be compared to another person. Whether it's a so called good person or bad person, I don't know that it makes any difference. If you are compared to one of your siblings who is really gifted at something, let's say it's a sport, and one of them maybe can run super fast, and the other one, no matter how hard they try, they can't. But to see all the accolades given to another person, or to hear about it, even if it's an innocuous comparison, oh boy, wouldn't you love to be as fast as your brother? Or comments like that. And I don't think those are intended to harm. It's like, well, should I want to be as fast as my brother? I don't know. But those can really hurt. And maybe all of us at some point or other have had comments like that handed to us, or or if it isn't a comment, if we know or perceive that we're being compared to someone else, it just doesn't feel good. And I've kind of mentioned families here. The same could go in the workplace, and and I mean, just let's be honest. Of course, it happens in the workplace. There are people more gifted than others at a particular job or career path, and they're more productive, they get more done, clients like them better, their peers like them better, whatever it is. I think we all realize people are gifted differently. But the person with fewer gifts, that doesn't mean that they are not valuable. Maybe they don't make the same amount of salary or whatever that the more gifted person does, but they're still valuable. I think of the employees that we have at our office. It's no different than any other place. Some of them are more gifted than others at certain tasks, and maybe that's part of the worth as a person. Nobody is worthless. Everybody is gifted at something, and maybe some of those things just tend to line up more on a particular career than maybe some other things do. Um, but but yeah, sometimes there's hard feelings. People feel bad, and if you're working with a peer group and everybody wants to be a contributor, and one person has, well, the one person's more gifted than another, and sometimes they're peers, you just feel bad about that for some reason because you want to be able to contribute as much as the other person. I think a lot of it is probably just personal pride. Who doesn't want to be at the top of the heap, or good at what they do, or to be recognized as such, to feel valued? I think that's something we all want to have. Even the most callous person would say, well, I don't care what other people think. Well, whatever. You can say that, but I don't really believe it, unless, it's the type of person that's just lazy or some shiftless bum or whatever. So for an employee, for a family member, for whatever to feel the sting of being compared, um, that hurts. especially, I think probably especially in a workplace, people know that the employer is going to be making some comparisons. When I worked in another city earlier on in my career, I was in Portland for 4 years at one of those big international accounting firms. I think I heard that the management team would periodically rank each class of employee and each peer group, different tiers of folks that they had working there. For example, they would have partners, they would have senior managers, just plain managers, senior accountants, so forth. So within all those groups, they would compare and rank all the employees so they would know kind of in terms of value. And you know what? As an employer now, I totally get it. You need to know who your people are and which side your bread is buttered on. Obviously you care more to lose your top talent than you would care to lose your bottom talent. So I mean that's just the reality of life. Those that have more skills and more to offer the company are probably going to get more attention by top management, maybe a few more perks because they want to keep them happy, want to keep them there. So those kinds of things. So I totally understand, the need for ranking or whatever. But that doesn't mean that they devalued everybody else. And for doggone sure, they didn't tell people what their rank was. I knew they did this, but I don't ever remember hearing anybody say, well, you are ranked number such and such. It just didn't happen. Maybe they told the top person, I don't know. But, there's a risk if you let that kind of information get out and people hear it. Well, all it does is it's comparing people to people, and nobody likes to be compared. So the only good that comes from the ad is to feel bad. And, if you want to keep all your people, well, you don't want anybody feeling bad. You want them out working and productive and feeling good about themselves. So for them to know the ranking, it just that wouldn't serve any useful purpose to the company, even if they did it. So if you do know, if you get told, then that doesn't feel very good. And so I guess all these things I'm just bringing up. I'm sure I'm not the only one that doesn't like being compared to someone else because the fact of the matter is we're all unique, individual, designed by our Creator to be exactly how we are, and as such it really is virtually impossible to compare a whole human being or person to another whole person in terms of overall value, if you will, or how that person should feel about themselves. And I'm talking normal people. I'm not talking, about what happens with criminals or people who are breaking the law or other nefarious type activity. Those are moral and ethical questions a lot more so than what I'm intending to make this. And I'm just talking about a pet peeve. That it doesn't feel good. And I've had this done to me before. A little bit ago I mentioned, it probably doesn't feel good to be compared to either a bad person or a good person. If you're an athlete and you're compared to the star athlete of the team, well, you're not as good as him or her, and to have another person held up as the benchmark or a gold standard, it just kind of makes you feel bad because maybe you just don't have the gifts that other person has, so all you end up doing is feeling bad, like you can't even contribute. But by the same token, nobody likes being compared to the bad person either. And when I say bad and good here, I'm using those terms very loosely, not really trying to imply goodness or badness hardly, but just as a means of comparison. It's, I know probably And you always consider the source too. If it's just a person on the street and you don't know who they are and they call you some name, well, maybe some of us can just brush that off. It's like, I don't even know you. Therefore, why should I care what you say about me or what you think? Because you don't know me and I don't know you, so who cares? Uh, but if it comes from someone close to you, like a family member, man, that can sting. From someone that you look up to and feel has your best interest in mind, and if they don't handle, oops, I should have left that out. I got a little bit more rolling to do here. And if they make the mistake, I believe, they make the mistake of comparing you to someone else, that can hurt pretty bad. And I know I've had that done to me before. It's kind of like, and I know we've all heard people do this before. Well, if you don't shape up in this particular area of life, you're going to end up just like so and so over here. And this so and so, if you will, is a broken human being who's maybe made a bunch of mistakes in their life, and they're reaping the consequences of those mistakes. Well, who likes to be compared to that? And maybe it's true. Maybe that should be a cautionary tale, but I'd like to believe that if you love the person you're trying to warn, that there's maybe a little bit healthier ways to do it so you don't, put them in a tailspin by comparing them to someone who everybody knows maybe has some issues. And maybe when it's in an authority type situation, like let's say it's your father comparing you to someone that you know he doesn't respect. Well, my goodness. Think of the message that that sends to the kid or to the person that he's talking to. It's like, Dad, I know you don't respect that person and you're comparing me to him or her. That sends a message as to what you think about me. And I don't know, maybe maybe I overthink all this. Oops. And maybe I'm too introspective sometimes on those kinds of comments. I guess, this whole narrative here has been about pet peeves. I just think there's a lot of hurt that can come from comparing one person to another and thinking that that somehow doesn't impact the psyche of that particular person. And I know we do it. I just think we need to be very careful about, especially if it's someone we love, comparing them to someone else and not realizing the impact that could happen or could have to them. And obviously, in all of this, I'm intending to mean something negative, when these comparisons are made. Now, if if it's a positive comparison, well, that's maybe a little bit different. If you got a kid that's real fast and runs track or whatever, and you say, awesome job, son, you were as fast as Carl Lewis or whatever, an Olympic runner, something positive, that makes him feel good, although in that case it's probably not even true, but you know what I'm trying to say. I hope. It's those negative things that get said that I think leaves the damage. And there was a phrase, I don't know if I mean, this phrase applies to a lot of things. Um, what do they say? People may forget what you say and do, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And I've kind of cast this as a pet peeve, but I wonder if that's what some of this is. You know, the comparison that a person makes, maybe in haste, not thinking of the impact. They may even forget the specifics of that, but they will never forget how they we're made to feel in the moment just by making a callous comparison. So I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking all this, who knows, and maybe some here would disagree. I know we make comparisons, it's what we do, but we got to be careful how we say those comparisons to those we love and care for. Now I'll put my spectacles back on. Oh, what's this one here? Text speak. I'm I'm from a different era, I think. I don't know. I know we've talked about cell phones a little bit in here. I have one. I have a smartphone, probably like a lot of us do. And I think I've even commented before, I don't even deserve a smartphone. I don't use it for its full potential, if you will. To me, it is basically only a phone. I send a few texts every now and again, but that's pretty well it. I don't surf the internet on it. I don't use a lot of apps. I occasionally will read an email on there. I can't stand typing on the teeny tiny keyboard in there, so I tend not to send emails through it. I just, and it's not on my personal a lot of the time. I just don't treat them maybe with quite the full potential that they would have. So being old school and not quite into, oh, that made me jump. Look at that. That's for you, Atomic. The alarm went off. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm pretty old school when it comes to my communication. So it's a pet peeve of mine when I read a text that is sloppy with grammar, misspells things, doesn't use punctuation. Like you take the word you, Y-O-U, and they will shortcut it to just plain you, just a single letter. I don't know why that bugs me. It just does. Like I say, and maybe this is why it gets shortened. They don't want to type on that little keyboard either, so they do some shorthand. And I just don't know all the shorthand. I think probably the only text speak or shorthand that I'll use every now and again is what is it, LOL, laughing out loud. Is that what that means? Um, Most of the rest, I mean, yeah, I just don't know what it means. They'll use a combination of letters and it flies over my head. It's like, what are you trying to tell me? So maybe I'm just getting to be an old fuddy-duddy, but and I know my kids will laugh at me too when they look at my texts. It's like, Dad, what are you doing? Writing full sentences and paragraphs in a text, and before I hit send, I try to go back and look at it and make sure I got my spelling right and all that kind of thing. So just one of my quirks, I guess. What can I say? Well, I guess one thing I can say is we are at the end of another episode. Oh, and it's even telling me my rental contract is up. So thank you so much for stopping by and taking a visit here as we roll our fields and I can sit and rant and rave and moan and groan about nonsense. But thanks for taking time to stop by. I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.